Well, President Donald Trump has signed a new executive order directing his administration to determine whether certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood will be labelled as foreign terrorist organisations and specially designated global terrorists. Rosalind Jordan joins us from Washington, D.C. Ros, can you just, first of all, explain exactly what this executive order actually means?
Well, basically, what this means is that the U.S. government is trying to decide whether three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in the 1920s, should be designated foreign terrorist organizations, as well as specially designated terrorist groups. These actions would basically impound any assets that the Muslim Brotherhood branches would have in the United States. It would possibly bar members from coming to the United States for any reason whatsoever. But what this executive order does is instruct the Department of State and the Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies to basically do their research to see whether these two designations are actually applicable to these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. There's first a 30-day deadline for an initial report, and then after that, another 45 days later, another report, after which ostensibly the Trump administration would decide whether to impose these two designations on these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. One reason why the U.S. is considering doing this, according to the executive order, is because after the October 7th attacks, these three branches basically gave their support to Hamas, and this is the initial justification why the administration wants to impose these two terrorist designations on these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood.
OK, thank you so much for explaining all of that so clearly for us. That's Rosalind Jordan for us in Washington, D.C. Well, staying with this, we're going to go to Boston now, and we're joined by Rami Khoury. He is a distinguished fellow at American University of Beirut. Thanks so much for being with us here once again on Al Jazeera. First of all, I know that Donald Trump, I believe, has signed this in less than an hour ago. Can you just give us your initial thoughts and how significant you think this is?
I don't think this is significant at all, Tom. This is typical of American policy, where they are dealing in a situation where there are people, groups, individuals, organizations who oppose American policy, criticize it, even resist it politically or in other ways. And they are dealing with the symptoms of the issue rather than its causes. The Muslim Brotherhood was largely and remains largely a non-militant, non-military, peaceful organization, cultural and social and economic and religious. They have a military branch on and off over the years, but these are totally controlled by the Jordanian and the Egyptian governments. So there's no chance of these people being involved in anything other than making possible statements in support of Hamas or anybody else who resists the Israeli genocide. So this is typical of American policy. They don't deal with the underlying causes, which is the Palestine-Israel conflict or American participation in that conflict on the side of Israel. They rather deal with the symptoms. And even if they do designate them as a terrorist organization, the use of the word terrorism now is totally insignificant and unhelpful, because it doesn't really have any clear meaning other than a terrorist is somebody that the United States doesn't like, because these people criticize or reject or oppose the policies of the United States. So if they do impose sanctions, well, first of all, these groups don't have bank accounts in the U.S., I'm pretty sure, so there's no money to be taken over. And any action that any members of these groups undertake would be then undertaken under the guise of a different organization, right, or just as individual. It's totally, it's very amateurish foreign policy, but it appeals to the right-wing zealots in the United States and in Israel.
OK, so why do you think Donald Trump has signed this executive order now? We heard a little there from Rosalind Jordan in Washington, D.C. for us, basically saying it all goes back to October the 7th.
Well, yes, the United States is trying desperately to make progress on the Hamas Israel situation, the fighting, the genocide by Israel, the resistance by Hamas. Now there's a ceasefire that the Israelis largely ignore and Hamas largely adheres to. And they don't want this to get out of hand. They want to keep showing that the Trump administration is doing everything it can to fight terrorism and bring about peace and a happy, good life for all. This is, of course, fantasy. This is American television fantasy. Trump comes out of television land, and he comes out of dramatic actions, whether on television or in politics, and this is in keeping with his tradition. I don't think many people take this seriously, but it's not aimed at the Middle East. It's really aimed at domestic television audiences in the United States and donors who provide the Republican Party with support, and the Republican Party is hemorrhaging support now because of its various ineffective policies.
Okay, what do you think are some of the wider implications here? You touched on this before, but the move since the Muslim Brotherhood or its allied groups, they're actually part of the political system in a number of countries.
Well, they're part of the system. They're in parliament. Some of them are ministers. There were elections in Jordan, I remember years ago when I was there. They won a plurality in parliament. They named the prime minister. So these are groups that are part of the fabric of society. They're first part of the cultural and religious fabric. These are Muslim majority countries. Their people are mostly devout. And they're mostly almost entirely peaceful people, but they're oppressed. They're not treated well either by their own governments or by Israel or by foreign governments in the West, and for the most part. So they end up having to work together to show some kind of collective activity that makes them feel that their rights are being protected. They have opportunities for education, for jobs, to be treated fairly by the criminal court system or civil court system. So there's activism that is carried out under the banner of the religion, Muslim Islamic religion, and the Muslim Brotherhood is one of the first groups that has done this. Many other groups have done this, and it's very similar to people in the United States, Christian fundamentalists who use Christianity as a means to express their discontent or their desires or their expectations as citizens to be treated decently and fairly. So the United States doesn't understand that people in the Middle East especially, but all over the world, want to be treated fairly and equally, and like all other people. They don't want to be singled out as terrorists or extremists or America haters. And the U.S. refuses to go into the underlying causes of why so many people join some of these groups and express these sentiments, which are, for the most part, peaceful, nonviolent sentiments. So there's a structural problem.
Sorry, we will leave it there, Rami. We do appreciate your time and your insight, as always, Rami Khoury, for us in Boston.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.